Hello and welcome to this video for the Bicester School History Department. This video is for a Year 7 lesson on the Tudors. This is to accompany the booklets you should be completing as part of your history work. These booklets are available to download from the school website. The link is in the description. Also, make sure to keep checking ePraise for any specific homework or learning tasks. This video is to help you if you need a little bit of guidance or help, or if you're stuck on what to do. As I read through the tasks and give information, I'd pause the video as we go so you can complete the tasks. Today we're going to look at the Tudors, or more specifically, how their reign began. In particular, we're going to look at Richard III and how he took power. The key points we're going to talk about are what claim Richard had to the throne, why he thought he could be king, what relation he was to Prince Edward and Prince Richard, the different theories about what happened to the two princes, and who stood to benefit from their deaths. The first task is to look at the family tree on the right-hand side. See if you can use it to try and work out what relation Richard III is to Edward III, what relation Edward III is to Richard III, and Richard III to Prince Edward. On this slide, I'm going to give you some information about Richard III. Now, Richard III was not a Tudor, but he was king before the Tudors came to power, so we need to learn a little bit about him. He was born on the 2nd of October 1452 into a large family. He was the 12th out of 13 children. But luckily for Richard, his family was rich. About 90% of England were poor, so he was pretty lucky. He ran the north of England for his brother. His brother was King Edward, and he ran it up to 1483. However, in 1483, Richard III's brother, King Edward, died suddenly. Now this was a shock, and he was named Lord Protector to Edward's son, Edward V, who was only 12 years old. It was Richard's job to look after the 12-year-old king and to make sure he made some right decisions. He swore to protect him. However, only a short while later, Richard took the title of King Richard III, and Edward's sons mysteriously vanished from the Tower of London. We're going to find out what happened to them. For your next task, I want you to click on the YouTube video that's in the description. Have a watch of it and see if you can answer the questions. What do you think happened to little Edward? Why do you think it happened? And who do you think did it? Now we know the basics of the story, it's time to do some investigating. One of the most important things to do as a historian is to weigh up evidence. And on this slide and on the next slide, we've got lots and lots of evidence about what happened in that tower. We're going to need to look at what the source says, see where the source comes from, and why the source says something in order to try and solve the mystery of what happened to Prince Edward and his brother. You're going to need to read through the evidence on this slide and see if you can work out what happened to the princes. Try and do this by yourself. but I'm going to give you an example to help. Let's look at evidence A together. It tells us that the princes were seen less and less. This might tell us that perhaps Richard killed the princes. But it was written by an Italian visiting London, so maybe they weren't there for that long. Can we trust that information? Also, the book he wrote was full of mistakes and they got facts wrong. Can we trust that information? Now, it doesn't really mean that it's wrong, but we just need to be careful about piecing together this puzzle. See if you can read through the rest of the evidence. Can you work out what's happened to the princes? This slide is for those of you who want to try some trickier evidence. To give you a hand, the Henry talked about in this slide is Henry VII, the person who would take over and defeat Richard at the Battle of Bosworth. But that's for next time. Now we've read through all that information, it's now time for us to work out what has happened. So, the first task on the left-hand side is to write a short summary as what has happened to the princes so far. What happened to their father? Who was put in charge of looking after them? The next task is to try and work out who would want the princes dead. Who would have the motive? Why would they want them dead? It's now time to use all the evidence that we've researched throughout this lesson. On the left-hand side, see if you can write down any evidence that the princes might have been murdered. For example, you could talk about evidence D. On the right-hand side, see if you can think of any evidence to say that they weren't murdered. For example, evidence A. See if you can try and get 2 or 3 bits of evidence for each side. And finally, it's time for you to make your mind up about what happened. Did Richard kill the princes in the tower? Or do you think he was innocent? See if you can write a couple of sentences on it. In my opinion, I think it's probable that Richard did kill them, but he might not have done it himself. He might have ordered it. But it might not be the case. Next time, we're going to talk about the Battle of Bosworth and how Richard VII came to the throne. I hope you found this useful. If you need any more specific help, email your history teacher. Thanks for watching.